All
Well, good
right.
day to everybody. I'm Chief Master Sergeant Jessica McWain. I'm the Air Force Sergeants Association Uniform Services Trustee, and we have brought together really a tremendous group of total force Air Force professionals to address any issues that are on the mind of our uniform services members, to be able to represent that to the Executive Council, the division presidents, to our legislative affairs coordinator, trustee. And so we'll just take a moment and give everybody the opportunity to introduce themselves. I'm currently at JBER up in Alaska. I'm the security forces manager up there. I have some time as a first sergeant as well. And then I also have time as a professional military education instructor. So pretty diverse background. I'm 21 years in and sure hoping to do 9 more years if my family and my body all hold up. Looking to spend as much time as I can. I absolutely love it. And I turn it over to Chief Master Sergeant Retired Kevin Ott to introduce himself. And I do want to formally say thank you for hosting us in the Zoom meeting and handling all the tech, the comm expert that you are. Over.
Well, yeah. Set me up for failure there at the expert word. Chief Master Sergeant Retired Kevin Ott. I was able to make it 30 years. Last couple were a little rough on the old body. And division president with the Air Force Sergeant Association, and also one of the moderators out on the Ask a Chief page. Give a shout out for that group there. We got about 38,000 followers on that group. Tremendous resource, and the team that's all behind the scenes, I'm just a small piece of that. We've really been able to answer and vector some airmen to the appropriate places they needed to get their issues resolved. So something just like we're doing today is pretty important normally, and just tremendously important right now in this current environment. So thanks, Jessica, for leading this.
And then we can just go around the horn. Hopefully that list is still over in the chat as far as the order, and allow folks an opportunity to introduce yourself, at least enough about your background so folks know what experience you're bringing to the table. Over.
My name is Matthew Schwartzman. I am currently the Policy Advisor Legislative Affairs for the Air Force Sergeants Association. I've been with the AFSA team now for just over a year, and it truly has been one of the best years of my life. I can say that with absolute certainty. I essentially serve as one of the leading advocates, legislative liaisons, if you will, between the AFSA membership and our elected officials, Capitol Hill and the administration, departmental officials at the VA, DOD, DHA, other satellite departments and agencies. So I essentially try to do the best that I can to hold these elected officials and these departmental officials accountable to ensure that the total force, service members past, present, and their families have the best possible quality of life that they can have. I'm just trying to provide a service to those who have served. So with that, I yield the remainder of my time over.
Thank you. Looks like I'm next up on the list. Senior Master Sergeant Adam Willemssen, currently selected as a squadron superintendent for the 459th Air Medical Evacuation Squadron on Joint Base Andrews. Prior to that, I did 8 years active duty as a 3C2 tech controller, was stationed at Scott Air Force Base and Buckley Air Force Base, and got married to a Coastie, got out, took a 9-month break in service, and spent about 4.5 months of that 9 months trying to get back into the service. So been a reservist at Andrews ever since, and in the X4N career field, so I'm a aeromedical evacuation technician there. So happy to be here. I'll field any questions as far as education benefits. I've used every cent the Air Force has thrown my way, and just happy to provide inputs where I can.
Hi, I'm Chief Master Sergeant Diane Schaefer. I am currently the superintendent for the 432nd Support Squadron at Creech Air Force Base. That squadron houses logistics, civil engineering, force support, and communications. I'm a communicator by trade. I've been active duty for 23 years. It'll be 24 in April. I have experience also in recruiting, quite a few years, and I also have some experience in wing inspections and plans. Currently, Creech is a unique beast because we're creating ourselves as an installation for the last year now. So I have some experience with that as well. We do have total force presence there at Creech, and I'm just here to answer any questions you might have. As a side note, I'm married to another chief. He's a TAC P, and we have 4 children. So a wealth of challenges come along with that as well.
And I thought I was having my hands full with 2 kids. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chief Master Sergeant Sarah Faith. I currently work at the Pentagon. I am the Director of Executive Services for, I work directly for the CAFR, for General Scobie, which I think is probably the coolest job you can have. That's a little bit of bragging. I've been in for almost 24 years. I have 11 years on active duty. I've been a TR, an IMA, and now AGR, so I've done a little bit of everything. Like I said, I have 2 very ferocious young girls who are 100% virtual learning with us this year, and they keep me busy.
Hi everyone, I'm Master Sergeant Javan Kimmel at Buckley Garrison in Colorado, Buckley Air Force Base formerly, right? I'm actually at the Air Reserve Personnel Center here, and I'm a recruiter by trade, and I'm a liaison here to ARPC. So really, I bring to the table here for you some communication pieces and how to help in your transition from either active duty or for the Air National Guard, or if you know somebody who isn't in and trying to join the reserve, that piece there in current recruiting functions and roles and policies. A big piece of what I do also is about how do we adapt and our changing, evolving, Air Force Reserve and to our total force recruiting and total force integration across. That's kind of what I do here and what I bring to the table. I spent 7 years as an AGR security forces, and I've spent the last bit of my career here now as a recruiter. So I really have bring that to the table there.
Hi, I'm Chief Master Sergeant Jeff Taylor. So I am currently the 461st Operations Group Chief. I've been in the Air Force for 27 years and been married to the same woman the entire time. We have 2 daughters and a 4-year-old granddaughter. Through my career, I've been in operations the entire time, but I've never not been in some type of total force or coalition joint unit. So I've got time with Navy, time with Army, 5 years in NATO flying operations there. And then currently we are a full TFI unit where we're embedded even down to the squadron level. With 25 deployments, we've gotten to see a lot. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Chief Carrie Stokes. I'm the 168th Medical Group Superintendent, part of the Alaska Air National Guard. We are a tenant unit on Willemssen Air Force Base. I've been here for 13 years. I spent time in traffic management as a distribution superintendent. I spent time in emergency management as well as a wing emergency manager. Prior to that, I was a drill status guardsman. I was an IMA reservist prior to that in the pharmacy, and I started with 9 years active duty in the pharmacy. Also mill to mill, my husband is an active duty maintenance group chief, currently deployed. We have 4 kids, one's in college in Portland. One is here in the Guard with me. We have a daughter in high school, virtual learning, which is pretty interesting. And we also have a almost 7-year-old that's virtual learning as well. I did my time active duty and I didn't want it to be wasted and couldn't get an assignment with my husband because of his AFSC. So I joined the reserves and here we are. I've been at Willemssen 5 years alone of the 13 that we've been here due to my husband's active duty assignments. But yeah, we make it work, and yeah, I'd be a great recruiter, but horrible at retention because I want everyone to go do what they want to do. But real big on we getting these young kids in here, especially here in Alaska, getting them into the Guard unit here. So I enjoy it. Thanks.
Hey, I'm Master Sergeant Daniel Johnson. I am currently in Boise, Idaho, Gowan Field. I have 14 years in, 12 years as an AGR, as a drill status guardsman before that, 6 years on the flight line as an avionics technician, and then the last 8 years have been in Comm, doing various things, just client systems, and then right now my official title is communications chief, which sounds like I'm jumping the gun because I'm just a master sergeant, but I do in garrison, and then we have mobile communication trucks that I also manage. I've transferred from the Idaho Air Guard to the Wyoming Air Guard, so I dealt with all that jazz as a guardsman. I have hired active duty personnel and worked with the Palace Chase on that side and worked through that. I've done PCS from state to state, so I just have a lot of information as far as what that means. And a state to state transfer is really like you're getting out of the military and back in, is really the takeaway on that. But yeah, anything as far as cross training and joining the Guard from active duty and joining other units. I'm also looking into commissioning right now. I just finished my degree up. I was looking at active duty, which was another adventure. It doesn't really look like that's going to pan out. So I am looking at the entire country as a guardsman and possibly a reserve opportunity. But that's what I'm doing right now.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Master Lowery. I'm a military training instructor down here at Joint Base San Antonio, Lackland. I got off the line in May. I had 14 flights over 2.5 years. I went over to work now at the 737 training group, and I run the MTI DST screening team. So if you ever had anyone that wants to be an MTI and they've gone through the active duty DST process or the reserve or guard side, we're going to see their package. They're going to talk to us, and we're going to process them and get them going to see if they get selected to come down here and wear the awesome campaign hat. I just hit 16 years. I've got a 6-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son who just this weekend decided to match his dad's mustache with a blue marker. So that was an interesting time this weekend. But I'm a comm guy by trade. I'm a cyber transport 3D1X2. A lot of tactical comm, being out in the field, deploying, getting down and dirty. That's what I prefer to do. So I've had definitely a lot of those experiences. But I appreciate y'all having me on, and hopefully I can contribute someone to help some of y'all out. And if you ever have any questions, you can always find us and our team on the GAL, 737 TRG MTIR. We can answer any questions you have or get you hooked up with the right people.
Hey everyone, I'm Master Knepshield. I'm out here at Beale Air Force Base as a first sergeant for the 9th Aircraft Maintenance Squadron. Been in almost 15 years, 4th base, 5th PCS, 2 deployments under my belt. Been in AFSA since 2012 in a gamut of variety of roles and areas. So come here to listen, gain some insight from what you guys want to talk about, and lend my ear as well. Thanks.
Yes, I'm Master Sergeant Richard Jenkins. Most know me as Toto. I am currently the 60th MXS Munitions Flight Chief and the Munitions Accountable Systems Officer. Really just here to contribute as best I can. I've been involved with a couple TFI units at Whiteman with the A-10s there, working with the 442nd. And then when I made Master PCA'd over to the 509th, I was part of the active duty and guard unit there. So a lot of experience with the TFI realm.
And I don't know if your comms are up. I know we've got Master Brown as a career advisor. Did I get that right?
Yes. Yes, I am. You probably see me as iPad 3 on the participant. Sorry about that. This is Master Sergeant Brown. I'm the career advisor for Headquarters Rio. It's the first time they've ever had a career advisor. So needless to say, it's been a very interesting laying the foundation to help our IRRs out. A little bit about me. I go back to the late 80s, RegAF. Technically this year I'm now in my 5th decade of service, although I only have 18 years of service, so it's a little math problem for you there. But I've been just about every status, RegAF, TR, ART, and now an AGR. Oddly enough, I've never been an IMA, but I manage the IMA, so I'll take that as an equal. I've been a first sergeant. That was my last assignment prior to this. By trade, I'm a loggy, 2G. And then I've been also in weapons and aerial port. And I've done some time as a command post augmentee on MPA days. And I've also spent 3.5 years just recently at ARPC under RPA orders in force development. So I did a lot of the development teams, Step 2 board, did the Command E89 board, and all the education boards, the RSSB, RDEDB, and the EDEB. So all the acronyms that we can think of, I have them. So I do bring a pretty good knowledge base to the table when it comes to the school boards and development teams and how that all works out. And then I can also help anybody who wants to come into the IMA world and talk about that, which I'm glad we're having this conversation because my biggest retention problem is my first term IMAs or second term airmen because of the lack of information they're getting coming into the program. So hopefully I can help in that. I'm looking forward to being part of this, and I will give up to the next person. Thank you.
In case there's somebody I can't see on my screen, is there anybody that did not get an opportunity to introduce themselves? Over.
I'm Chief Master Sergeant Shannon Vanderswag, 349th ASTS Superintendent, 4N or medic by trade, did that for 20 years, then became a first sergeant. I have deployed and I have worked all things medical, from medical boards, flight surgeon, pretty much name medical. I've worked toward work and immunizations. I've been a schoolhouse instructor. I did that for 5 years before I went in to become an IMA, been a TR. I've not done AGR, but I've been on RPA orders, and I've been in 27 years.
Well, welcome everyone. It doesn't look like we have a tremendous crowd waiting anxiously with questions. So I'd like to maybe just throw some questions to the group based on some of those introductions and backgrounds that we have. I'm actually just going to go back up to the top of the list here and give Matt Schwartzman an opportunity to talk about the big ticket items legislatively that the association is working. And really, I ask that you focus on across our total force, right? Because not everything is an active duty RegAF uniform service issue. There are some specific reserve guard issues as well. So if you can speak to some of those, I'd greatly appreciate it. Over.
Yeah, of course. So in reference to what the most significant piece of legislation that our team is looking at right now, in my opinion, it's without question the fiscal year 2021 National Defense Authorization Act. As you may be familiar, there's a lot going on right now with, a pending transition happening at the presidential level, to changes being made in personnel at high levels in DOD, Pentagon, other places. There's also going to be 2 special runoff elections in Georgia that may determine who holds the majority in the Senate. And all of these different factors certainly have an impact on the way in which the legislative process is currently being conducted. Just a couple of days ago, both the House and the Senate unveiled the official list of conferees. These are the individuals who will negotiate the final piece of legislation for the defense authorization bill. that will ultimately be referred to the president. Just to kind of speak specifically to some of the major provisions that are in the fiscal year 21 NDAA, before I go into specific pieces of legislation that we're currently looking at across the total force for those in the Guard and Reserve. First and foremost, in the fiscal year 2021 NDAA, as it currently stands right now, there's a 3.0% pay raise that's included in the legislative language. For the first time in back-to-back NDAAs in history, we're likely to see pay raises that exceed 3.0% in those consecutive years. The second takeaway from the fiscal year 21 NDAA that I'll brief everyone on is in reference to an explicit prohibition of substandard housing units for those who are residing on base and for those who are within the military privatized housing initiative network at large. We are still looking to see what exactly substandard means, but this is a tremendous stepping stone in the right direction, as were the building blocks as established in the fiscal year 20 NDAA, which included something that was referred to as the Military Housing Bill of Rights Initiative, which were 18 explicit rights that tenants had, essentially to hold landlords who may have been negligent a little bit more accountable. To give everyone an update on where that is, 14 of the 18 rights have been unveiled by DOD, 4 still remain. Our team was actually on a call with leading officials at DOD just a couple of days ago to get an update on where those final 4 rights were in the process. The 2 most important, first is going to be a standardized dispute resolution process that is going to be codified. DOD says that we are looking at a January 1 timeframe for that specifically to be released. And then the second most important out of those final 4, I would venture as to say, is the capacity for tenants to withhold rent from their respective landlords in an instance where a landlord is negligent or some type of oversight measure hasn't been met. And we're still waiting on the final language for both of those from DOD. And that also has a January 1 timeframe. So some improvements to military housing are on the precipice, I would say. The next piece that I think is important to mention, the 21 NDAA, is that military families moving forward and codified in law will now be taken into consideration when it comes to basing decisions that are made. So that includes a number of different variables, including whether a basing decision will have good access to healthcare, close proximity to accredited, schools and universities, both for the spouse and for children, among so many other measures. So that's also another important measure that's going to be included in there. Something that I know has been of particular interest, not only to our legislative team, but to this committee in specific, is in reference to measures that are being taken to prevent and spread awareness on prevention measures for sexual assault. And so one of the measures that is included in the fiscal year 21 NDAA is essentially a report to analyze the effectiveness of the SARC and the Victim Advocates Program. This is part of these specific measures were taken for a more holistic approach to prevent sexual assault, sexual harassment on base and for military personnel. And I know that perhaps we'll be discussing a position paper that was circulated earlier on a different measure that is potentially being pursued. But the SARC and the VA program, as some of us call it, is definitely going to be looked at through a more thorough lens to ensure that those particular individuals have the tools that they need to best help survivors what life could be like following such an incident, and also to potentially deter and prevent such incidences from happening in the first place. For those who are looking to potentially retire and then transition to jobs in the upper echelons of the Department of Defense. You may be familiar with something that's called the 180-day revolving door policy, which essentially states that if you, upon retiring, you will not be eligible to receive a job at DoD until the conclusion of a 180-day revolving door period. There are currently language in both the House and the Senate versions of the NDAA that would make modifications, a 3-year pilot program it's being called on one side to eliminate the 180-day hiring rule for all positions. And then the other, in the other provision is going to be a permanent measure that would eliminate that particular revolving door policy for positions that are only maintained to readiness. And the example that I use is for those who are doing work at depots, for example. So the timeline that's been given for the fiscal year 21 NDAA, we are currently anticipating an early January timeline for passage. However, nothing is final. Anything can happen in just a mere 24 hours. The one particular issue that has been really enunciated and deemed as very important, specifically by Democratic leadership, is in reference to the renaming of Confederate bases. It remains to be seen if that particular provision is going to be a poison pill measure for the administration or for any of the leadership on either side. But as more details unfold on that, our team will keep you informed through our various modes of correspondence, and that's Facebook, panels such as these, our military and government brief as well. Specifically in reference to those for the NDAA, for in the Guard and Reserve, for those who may have been activated and are now on the front lines combating or playing a role in combating COVID-19. There are certain provisions that would call for the extension and increase in hazard duty pay as well. So that is just, before I move on to other specific pieces of legislation, does anyone have any questions in reference to the fiscal year 21 NDAA? Anything you'd like me to elaborate on further or anything like that? Or all right. So then in bringing this, at an overarching level to the total force at large, there are a couple of particular measures that our team is looking very closely at for those who are in the Guard and Reserve. First, I would say is a measure that's on our legislative platform that reads as to fix the quote-unquote complex reserve duty status system. As you may be familiar, members of the reserve component who are activated in an involuntary mobilization under statute 12304A and B, if I'm not mistaken, those specific individuals may not be eligible to the full range of benefits as those who are activated under other mobilization authorities. There was legislation that was introduced in the 115th Congress that would seek to remedy that discrepancy or lack of parity in those benefits. And we are looking to take the intent of that legislation in the 115th Congress and pursue it once again as we enter the 117th Congress. And essentially that legislation and the intent of that legislation was to have those specific reserve component members be eligible for pre-mobilization healthcare, transitional healthcare, consideration of active duty service to reduce age for retired pay, which is a big one, post 9/11 educational assistance. Some of that was addressed in the Harry Colmary Veterans Education Assistance Act of 2017, but there are still some discrepancies, one of which I'll cover with another piece of legislation. And then also a non-reduction in pay while serving in the uniformed services of the National Guard as well. So that's kind of the intent. That's something that we are looking into as we close the 116th and then move into the 117th Congress, working to kind of streamline those particular provisions to ensure that there is no discrepancy, which have been shown through various studies to decrease morale, and quite frankly is just it's just a wrong that needs to be righted. And so we're looking into that The specific when it comes to education, what I will mention is that the Air Force Sergeants Association, we launched 2 advocacy campaigns in our virtual Legislative Awareness Week, which you are unfamiliar, took place from October 4th to October 10th. And the 2 particular measures were HR 5870 and Senate Bill 3266. This was the Guard and Reserve GI Bill Parity Act. And what this act does is it builds on the stepping stones of the Harry Colmary Veterans Educational Assistance Act to amend Title 38 to ensure that the time during which members of the Armed Forces Uniformed Services, during the time in which they serve on active duty for training, that will qualify for educational assistance under the post 9/11 Educational Assistance Program of the VA. So that is the other particular legislative measure that we're looking into. What I can say with what I would like to consider absolute certainty, although I will always remain cautiously optimistic, perhaps that's a testament to my youth, is that we will be able to pass some of these measures in the 116th Congress. But given that we are currently in a lame duck session with all of these different variables that I mentioned earlier, our legislative team is primarily focused on coming up with new plans of actions and new co-sponsors, new supporters, and et cetera, to move these specific issues through the legislative process in the 117th Congress, which is going to begin in early January, once those pending transitions, if they do take place, that is. I don't want to speculate. So that specific to the Guard and Reserve, those are a couple of other measures. When it comes to reducing the retirement age, that's another one from 60 to 55, or the compensation age rather from retirement from 60 to 55. That's also something that our legislative team is looking to make another cohesive effort to be a little bit more proactive in the 117th Congress. And there was also legislation introduced in the 115th Congress that would allow members of the Ready Reserve to actually enroll in a standard TRICARE program. So that way they would have lower copays, lower enrollment fees, et cetera. So that way any pay discrepancies that may exist between those in active duty and those in the Guard and Reserve, they wouldn't have an undue financial burden for those who are looking to enroll in high quality healthcare through the TRICARE program.
Really appreciate it, Matt. If you could add, how could someone find our current legislative platform? So if they weren't aware, right? Folks who are just learning about who we are, Air Force Sergeants Association, where could they go? How could they find our current legislative platform?
Sure. So the legislative platform is readily available on the official Air Force Sergeants Association website. If they were to access the website through hqafsa.org, they would be able to see a sub-tab on the website that's labeled as legislation. If they were to hover over legislation, they would see another sub-tab that says legislative platform. They can click on legislative platform, and you would be able to see not only a print version, but also a downloadable PDF that you could print and readily distribute at your pleasure. So that is how anybody can access the legislative platform. But I would also mention that while you are on our website, feel free to also take advantage of our Legislative Action Center, which is essentially a central hub where members can support the efforts of the headquarters lobbying team and write letters that are either authored by template letters that are authored by our headquarters, legislative team, or letters that you'd like to author yourselves. And you could actually write your elected officials and stating your priorities and in support of specific pieces of legislation that our team might spotlight. And you could do that in a sub-tab that's labeled as Take Action. And from the Action Center, you can also subscribe to our Military and Government Brief, which is the official newsletter of the Military and Government Department, which has breaking news, pulls back the curtain on how we do what we do at the headquarters, as well as just provides a holistic overview of what's happening legislatively with the total force.
We appreciate it. So what I want to throw out there is I started with Matt deliberately because the legislative actions of the Air Force Sergeants Association are so much at the core of what we do. Realize as your uniformed services trustee, my role is to advocate issues, needs, quality of life concerns for our uniformed service members. We have a Veterans Affairs trustee, we have a family member trustee, so we also have ways to advocate those particular issues that are impacting the lives and careers and livelihoods of uniformed service members. And you can use your chapter trustees to advocate those things. Almost every division has a uniformed services trustee appointed as well within their division. You could jump on our Facebook page. You could use the Ask a Chief Facebook page and it's still going to get to us. But continue to advocate not just deliberately for those legislative concerns, but really anything that's affecting quality of life issues. So I really appreciate that, Matt. I want to give Senior Willemssen a chance. So I know that you have used an outrageous amount of your education benefits. I think it would be a good opportunity just to give you a chance to kind of speak to that. What's the why behind it and some of those lessons learned that you'd like to pass on to folks that are viewing this? Over.
Sure. Thanks for the intro. Yeah, I guess I'll start off with a little story. I originally joined the Air Force because I didn't think that I was quite ready to go to college. I was kind of a punk rock kid and I didn't really have a lot of direction other than I knew I wanted to go to the Air Force. I'd say my very first supervisor, once I got through my initial training, basically told me, he's like, there's an education office across the base. I want you to go over there and sign up for some classes, right, and start. And I essentially have never stopped. I'm working on my 5th degree right now, which happens to be a doctorate in interdisciplinary leadership. And all that came from a passion born out of Airman Leadership School, right, just taking care of airmen. I don't have anything really formally prepared for education remarks other than the fact that there are so many opportunities out there, regardless of what status that you're in, that you can use. And the question is really, what do you want to do? And then we find the benefit that really matches up with your status and your goals. Having been at the education piece for a little while, really, if I had a piece of advice to give, again, knowing what's out there as far as tuition assistance, GI Bill, if you have a specific education goal, look for a specific program. The Air Force has some specific programs that vector people to nursing. If you're interested in medicine, or at the physician's assistant level, or even becoming a physician, there are programs that will fund almost your entire education. So I have to give a huge nod to the CCAF. Even if you weren't planning on getting it or using that particular education piece, that allowed me to knock 2 years off of my bachelor's program. And then I got to step into an accelerated master's program. And now being in an educational doctorate, looking back at the quality of instruction that I received in some of these Air Force educational programs, it's at or above what I would have gotten in the civilian market as well. I said earlier, my AFSC is X4NO. Now I'm the 9 level air medical evacuation technician. What I got in that, just the tech school, was comparable to the civilian equivalent of a FPC or certified flight nurse, flight paramedic program. So, yeah, I just say it's out there. You just gotta connect whatever you want to do with whatever resource will enable you to get there. And I would hope that we're developing our supervisors to help connect those dots. Education office is always there, and just ask those questions because it's there for you.
Any other thoughts on education before we move on to a different topic from the crowd? Over.
Let me just say two very quick things. First and foremost, education and from a legislative lens is the same as a benefit that is such, a commissary or an MWR exchange. It's a use it or lose it benefit. And I also just want to say, in reference to specifically tuition assistance, the Air Force Sergeants Association would like to thank Air Force leadership for reversing course on a policy change that had been made September 29th and October 1st of this year that had reduced the tuition assistance annual cap by $750. That was from $4,500 to $3,750. I know that the members of our legislative team were very keen on doing very detailed research into this matter, and Executive Director Reed specifically had actually been in constant communications with CMSgt and CMSgt's office to relay the concerns that were relayed to us from our membership in reference to this tuition assistance annual cut or annual CAT reduction. And so these benefits sadly are use it or lose it benefits, and they have tremendous upside, not only as it pertains to readiness, but as it pertains to quality of life and the transition of those during their military service to their life in the civilian sector as well. I just wanted to insert that really quickly, but thank you very much.
Appreciate it, and really looking to tag in Chief Taylor. I know you have a tremendous amount of just joint, total coalition experience, a lot of diverse teams that you've worked with and led. What insight do you have as far as preparing specifically for joint operations, but also working with coalition teams as well? Over.
Yeah, sure. So that's a great question and a great topic. Really, it all comes down to the individual. When you work with Joint Service Coalition, it's really about your adaptability as a leader to understand that we're not all the same. Every branch of service is a little different, slightly different culture, different ways of doing things. The same applies to coalition, right? So many countries, their military have unions. They have different on and off ramps that allows them to take a break from the service, come back in. We have some of those same mechanisms, but really it's about understanding the diversity of the force that you're working with and being willing to get outside of your comfort zone and learn and ask questions. So of course it all starts like anything with a little education, right? So being able to take on joint PME courses, look for those opportunities to spend time with different folks in different statuses or different services, whether that's stateside or downrange. It gives you that exposure. And then ask lots of questions. None of us know everything, and the best way to learn is just simply ask.
I appreciate that. Yeah, in that same vein, we've got several folks that have IMA experience. I can tell you that it's not something that I knew what it was for many, many years. So I think it would be a great opportunity just to use this platform to help educate folks. So I know there's a few different folks, whoever wants to tag in first on kind of the beauty that is the IMA program and how it's different from some of our other components. Over.
Well, I mean, I can jump in here. I've not been, like I said in my intro, an IMA, and I know there's IMAs out there on the call right now. But I can underscore some of the differences when it comes to TR, traditional reserve side, and the IMA side. The main differential is how you serve, right? As an IMA, you're attached to a RegAF unit rather than a reserve unit, for one. And essentially, as I counsel folks, is you're your own wing, right? You're one person, and you are assigned to one billet, and then you essentially are expected to hit the ground running, fully qualified in the job, and to where you can seamlessly transition into that Reg F's billet if that is vacated for whatever reason. That is the ideal definition of an IMA. Now, there's a lot of layers below that, of course. There's the one interesting thing about the IMA is that, you know, of the 1,200 plus passcodes that we service, each unit has a different ops tempo. And when I tell people that are interested in the IMA program, I always get the common thing is I get to do all my time at once, which is a lot of that's true, but there are a lot of reasons why you maybe not want to do that. It's very hard to serve all of your time at once for several reasons, and that's something that needs to be addressed to folks who are asking about the IMA program. Because on paper that sounds pretty good, but you'd be amazed at how much brain dump you'll have after 11 months of not serving, and then you're expected to go in and hit the ground running and run a squadron, or for my officers, or go just do normal work. I mean, myself as a loggy, for instance, as a TR. You know, it's almost an impossible job to do as a TR. I did as an art, but we do have TR billets. IMA loggies are a little bit better because you can do all of your time at once, and you get a little more beneficial work to your unit. So some other differences is that you're not really tied down to where you live as an IMA, right? I'm at Buckley Air Force Base, but I have people that live here in Aurora, Colorado, that serve in Japan, that serve in Germany, that serve in Alaska, that serve all these different places as an IMA, which gives them a lot of flexibility. And that's where that serving all at once comes in handy, because you can combine your IDTs and your annual tour in one fell swoop and get it all just taken care of in a 30-day run. So it allows a lot of people a little bit more flexibility of where they can serve, right? And so that's another big differential of the IMA program. But the big thing that I always like to tell people is that we get complacent, right? When we're in the military, you know, Reg F, you know, I'll just take care of that tomorrow, right? The TR reserve is, I can take care of that next month. The IMA, you don't have that luxury, right? So the IMA, you really have to be proactive and really plan ahead for your next IDT to make sure that you get everything taken care of when you can. And that also means getting things taken care of when you're not doing your IDTs. So that's where you really have to leverage the technology that's out there that we do produce at Rio to help our IMAs serve. And that's My Purse, our Rio Connect app, all of our regular websites that we do have. And then if all of that fails, you call me and I'll get you to the right people to help you out. And I stay very busy doing that. I get a lot of inquiries now, and I'm in the position. Sergeant Kimmel and I work very well together. So it's a great opportunity to serve, but we definitely need to point out the differences. I think that's all I can have at the moment, but I would like to hear from people in the audience or the call of the IMAs that have served as an IMA, and ask what their interpretation of or their impression of the IMA program was and how it is different now. So I will yield to the floor. Thank you.
So I can give a little bit of how it was when I was an IMA. I've actually been an IMA in 2 different organizations, one in the SG down at AFRC and then one in the Pentagon. And definitely what you're saying, Sergeant Brown, about how you really can't just do your month of duty, your 24 IDTs, and just, you know, call it good for the year. So in both the positions I was in, I was expected to, you know, not only stay in communication, but to stay up on all of the things that were happening. And as quite a few medics on the call, you know, you can't really do that if you're only logging in, you know, a couple of weeks out of the year. Great opportunities, had a great time doing both of those IMA assignments, but it's tough. I mean, even as a chief or working with generals who are IMAs, they don't get paid on time. We have duty statute issues. We have, you know, delays in orders. There's a lot of things that happen that cause IMAs to stop being an IMA. So I know that Rio is working on it. I know that the debts are working on it, but they've been working on it a long time, and we're still having these issues. And I say we because I'm the URC for the Pentagon, so I have a lot of IMAs that are still having these issues where they're not getting paid, and it's frustrating. So if you have IMAs, please reach out to them and see if they need your help, because they probably do.
I was, excuse me, I was an IMA from 2005 through 2004, 2005 through 2007. And I was in pharmacy tech. So obviously it was medical, and everything went very, very smoothly. But at that time I had no children. I had zero responsibilities. I explained it to people as I was my own everything. I was my own finance. I was my own comm. I did everything myself. And I did not have a hard time with my unit. That was when I was at Hale Air Force Base. So technically 419th, but I never talked to a single person in the 419th. I worked at the active duty clinic, and I never had any problems. The only thing I recall having an issue with is at that time, the reserves was having a trouble reimbursing for tuition. So a lot of people in my unit had trouble getting their tuition paid. So their diplomas were being withheld and stuff like that. But again, this was a long time ago. I didn't use reserve TA, so I don't have any experience with that. Towards the end of my time being a reservist, I would have stayed being a reservist, but I got a letter in the mail that said, we're getting rid of your spot. Do you want to drill for points only? And I wasn't interested in that. So then that went to the next round. They said, hey, we're basically getting rid of you. For me, it worked out because my active duty husband was PCSing, so I easily transferred into the Guard. But the program, I don't have anything negative to say about the program. It worked for what worked for me, leaving active duty, where I could go and get married and start a family and all that. It was a very, very good opportunity I had never heard of before until I tried to leave active duty, and the recruiter was great. And it was seamless. The only thing that didn't happen is I never once left active duty. I never got anything proper. I never did taps. I never got rated. Like, I did absolutely nothing. The active duty base I was at, there was a lot of unhappy people, and it is what it is. But that is one thing. But the IMA program itself, I don't have anything really bad to say about it. But you have to do everything on your own.
And Sergeant Kimmel, I know you've got some. Oh, somebody.
I just want to add something to that. I just want to add something to that real quick. So, Rio is going through a lot of organizational change as far as trying to make it easier for IRs to serve. That is our vision statement now that Colonel Bailey has put out there, and we have the entire headquarters staff and all the detachments focused on doing just that. And we're doing, the pay is a big thing, obviously. We've done, last year we did a surge group that came in and literally spent 6 months, almost 24 hours a day going through the My Purse tickets, getting those things taken care of. And what's amazing about that is, as cool as that is, and we got it all done, we're creeping back up there again. So it looks like we're gonna have to do another surge, because it's amazing how it's you get these spikes, and when you need to surge up to get these things taken care of. So the nice thing, it is on the radar. I think what we're really working on, as far as from my little seat here in the corner of the universe of Rio, the people I talk to, is expectation management, right? So I try to let them know up front what to expect. I deal a lot with the bonuses and stuff, and just the expectation, lining that up to what the reality is. People are pretty reasonable when it comes to that. Not saying that they should wait several months to get paid, but if they at least have an idea of how the process works and what is actually going on behind the curtain, I think people like to hear that they are being taken care of, even if they don't actually hear it, but they do trust in the process that it is working for them. So that's what I try to entail to the people I talk to all the time. So, but thank you for the input on the IMAs.
I appreciate all that dialogue. Anything else on that subject before I give Sergeant Kimmel some time to talk some lessons learned sitting there, moving to total force recruiting. And Palace Chase comes up, at least on, on my active duty side, it's always comes up in every conversation. How do I get my application approved? What do I need to do? How do I get considered? What can edge me there? And I know there is no perfect answer for that, but I'm certain you've got some experience that can benefit those of us sitting in the room right now and folks that are going to view this at their leisure. Over.
Absolutely. Palace, there's two really big programs here, right? Palace chasing and Palace fronting. Palace fronting is when you're separating from active duty and you're completing your contract. So initially you come in, you do a 4 or 6 year enlistment. At the end of that 4 or 6 year enlistment, then you transition right out. We all leave the Air Force one way or the other. You're Palace fronting and you're separating. It gives a good opportunity there for you to continue your career, like several of our speakers have talked about doing. Where you can leave active duty and go to the Guard unit or go to a reserve unit, and you can really maximize your capabilities moving forward while retaining some benefits at the same time, but not doing a full-time service. But then you're Palace chasing. So you initially came in, you did a 6 year enlistment, but all of a sudden you're 3 or 4 years in and you're like, you know what, it's time for me maybe to look at some different options. I want to look at something different. Maybe the Air Force is no longer for me because something in my life has changed, right? We all join the Air Force for one reason or the other, and life changes. We adapt and grow through that time period. So Palace Chase is the application. But to Palace Chase, you have to sign an agreement saying, I will join a Guard unit or a Air Force Reserve unit or the Air Force Reserve IMA program, because you're going to continue your service in some aspect. So that's kind of the big pieces here. Now, Palace Chase is a huge, awesome program. It's controlled by active duty. So don't ever think that the Reserve or Guard is the one saying, nope, can't do it. Sorry, we can't bring you across, because that's absolutely not true. We would love to have each and every one of you, because when you're coming from active duty, you've got a wealth of knowledge and experience. For the past 3, 4, 5, 6, I've seen individuals Palace Chase at 16 years. They re-enlisted 2 years ago, then life changed, and now they need to move into the Reserve or Guard. So don't think that it's something that it's out of your control completely, but at the same time, have some control of it. So the first thing you want to do, of course, is find your in-service recruiter. So your in-service recruiter at your local base. If you can't find them, talk to your first sergeants, talk to your MPF, right? They should be able to find and get a point of contact. Go to your family readiness. Worst case scenario, run up your chain of command. I promise you, we're out there. You can even hop on airforcereserve.com, put in your information just like you're trying to join the Air Force, and we can actually find your information that way, which is super awesome. Now, if you want to go Air National Guard because you want to go up to Isles, Alaska, and we really don't have any much of a reserve unit up there, trust me, we're going to help and assist you, put you in the spot that you want to be in, because it doesn't really do you justice if you're going to go to a location when the Guard unit is 10 minutes away from you and the reserve unit is 4.5 hours from you. That's just not good justice there. So find your in-service recruiter first. Next, now it comes down to your qualifications. There's a big difference between, are you qualified for active duty? But I'm serving on active duty right now. I'm qualified, right? But there's a big change, because active duty manages and maintains you 24/7, 365 in medical standards. As a reservist and guardsman, you have a completely different medical standard, because we only get to see you sometimes 2-3 days a month. If we're lucky, as we talked about the IMA program there, we might not see you for 6 months at a time, essentially. So we need to make sure that you're medically qualified to come into the Guard and Reserve, where our primary responsibility, honestly, is to backfill and deploy active duty, right? Either downrange assignments or local, and fulfill the mission requirements at your duty location. So we need to make sure that you meet medical qualifications. We need to make sure that you meet physical qualifications. We need to make sure you have time in service done, right? So you have to complete half of your initial contract. Half of your initial contract. After that initial contract, like I said, you could re-enlist tomorrow and then apply for Palace Chase 2 days later. That's a whole different gambit, but you could do these things. And then, of course, it comes down to job, right? What is your current AFSC and what's happening with the current AFSC? Now, being prior security forces and knowing some security forces piece there, it can be very frustrating when you're a security force member and you heard your friend who's some AFSC that doesn't seem like they're mission essential, right, is all of a sudden they're just getting out left and right from Palace Chase. But yet you and all your peers or security forces members are applying, or other AFSCs are applying, and you're mission essential. The manning is really low and we can't get approved. Be patient, okay? We said, hey, guess what, Big Air Force? We're here to do 4 or 6 years. They say, great. And they've planned for that. They've planned to see you for 4 or 6 years. If all of a sudden we're 6 months out from your separation, you have a lot better window and opportunity. Also, do some research. Talk to your in-service recruiter. Talk to some of your peers. Find those people out. Figure out your AFIs, right? Figure out exactly what the MyPERS, when you go to MyPERS, you actually hop on there. You can go to PALS for separations and PALS Chase separation, and it will show your links there also. And look and see what's required, what the time windows are. Hey, when can I apply? When can't I apply for PALS Chase? Once you've got these pieces put together and you've kind of put all your package together, you sat down with your in-service recruiter, you found out your next opportunity for your station, your next duty station as Guard Reserve member, you kind of understand your opportunity there, then you definitely have a package rolling forward. Now, I have a great airman right now who's actually at Mountain Home Air Force Base here in Idaho. She's phenomenal. And at a 3-year mark, we sat down when I was in her in-service recruiter, and she decided that, you know what, it's time for me to separate from active duty. And I want to become a nurse. And we sat down, we did all our stuff, we applied. Well, guess what? Big Air Force said no. Unfortunately, manning for your career field at your rank just doesn't help. And it's not the time. So she waited 180 days later, we reapplied again because her goal had not changed. She still wanted to become a nurse. She still wanted to achieve her goals. So when she applied again, guess what? Got denied again. Did it discourage her? Absolutely. Like many of you, I'm sure, have been or seen your peers get discouraged that way. We sat down, we talked, right? She did everything she needed to do. She looked at her educational benefits and her plan. And guess what? 180 days later, we're talking about now, her date of separation is coming up now. So now she's just PALS fronting instead of PALS chasing into a reserve assignment and be able to go to school and accomplish her goals. So even though it's something that we may sometimes get shot down, only be frustrated about the things that you can control. You know, you can control your fitness, you can control your readiness, you can control your items, you can control your communication and timeline with your recruiter and your process. You can't control what Big Air Force manning numbers are like. And so don't be frustrated about those things. Just have a plan, get good mentors around you, and start working toward that plan. Now, a lot of Air Force bases across the nation are becoming total force bases in some aspects. They're at Mountain Home. They've got the 729th, and they also have a 229th, I think. There was an Air National Guard unit. Find someone there and sit down conversation with them and get mentored. Have a conversation and say, hey, what is the Air Reserve like? What is the Air Guard like? What is it like when I transition to become a guardsman or reservist, do that 1 week in a month? A lot like the conversations we're having here, where you're transitioning, trying to see what it is completely different. So hopefully this kind of gives you some benefits and some ideas and some concepts and kind of explains the process of going from maybe your current spot and your hardship right now where you're at in the PALS Chase PALS Front program, and maybe looking at separation, either early separation or one day when I separate, and going from there. Look, you can sit down with any in-service recruiter, Air Guard or Air Reserve across the nation, and I promise you this, they're going to sit down with you and they're going to inform you about the benefits and opportunities and entitlements. Sometimes it's great for you. Sometimes the reserves are a really great fit. Sometimes the guards are a great fit. Mission location is the biggest difference between the two, honestly. Again, there's a guard unit in Boise, Idaho. So if you're separating from Mountain Home Air Force Base, 38 miles away, guess what? There's a guard unit right there. But if you're separating and you're trying to go to someplace completely different, look at where your locations are, what your mission is. Additionally, mission location, big differences there. And then have that plan of what fits for you. You know, sometimes the IMA program does. Sometimes there's other options out there too. Find mentors, find peers, control, and only worry about what you can control, and be proactive. Being proactive is the biggest part of your future, because let's be honest, no one controls your future but who? You, right? So hopefully those answer your questions.
Advice there, Sergeant Kimmel, right? And look, be proactive. My advice would be, for one, talk to your chief. Right? Understand the site picture within your career field, within your AFSC, but don't walk into your chief unprepared. Right? Control what you can. I see Chief Stokes, I'm getting a head nod there, right? So control what you can, research it, know what's going on, understand what your options are. You've got all kinds of supervisory chain, between you and the chief to do that, but don't be afraid to go talk to your chief. And I think I'm going to get another head nod. I think it was Chief Stokes that said it earlier. We exist to help you find the right path for you. So because your path means you're separating from active duty, right? Or your path means you're not doing 20 years or 30 years. And if that's how folks are getting treated out there, send them my way. You find any other Chief Master Sergeant that's sitting here, you find any other senior NCO that's sitting on this panel, and we'll help set folks straight, right? This isn't about the 20-year plan, the 30-year plan. This is about serving with honor, right? Serving with conviction, leading troops, and doing right by the uniform, or, you know, in virtual days now in your AFSA t-shirt. But that's what we exist to do. And I say we as leaders, we as your association, we're here to support you and help navigate all of the challenges of uniform service and what that means. I was just taking a look at some of the comments there. So I'm tracking from retired Chief Ott that the folks that are viewing this, if you want to see the dialogue that we're having along the side in our chat, some of the additional conversation about any of these topics, there's a text file that'll be associated with the video that you can go and pull. So before we move on, I do want to make sure I open it up to the floor. If there's any thoughts relative to anything we've talked about so far that you just didn't have the opportunity to share. Over.
Hi, everyone. So I've got something for you when it comes to education. One of the things being a comm guy by trade is that there's a lot of not just formal education through tuition assistance. There's so many certifications out there. You've got Air Force Cool. The Air Force and Space Forces just sent out a notification yesterday through Udemy Business. So they've signed up with them. So you can use your .mil email account and gain access. So you've got things like formal Excel training, Python, machine learning, all these other leadership, coaching, you know, how to do even peer reviews and things. So there's all sorts of other applications and other avenues, not just through your normal tuition assistance, but through your Air Force Cool, or even going online, you know, looking through, you know, the Air Force portal, finding things like that. There are many, many, many things out there. And that's one thing that we stress here at BMT for, you know, all these young trainees that become airmen is like, yes, you know, go get your tuition assistance, go to school, better yourself, but ask around, how do I better myself? Talk to your chief, talk to your supervisor, because there's so many different avenues and ways to get what you want and what you need, you know, to walk into when the military's done, because we all take off the uniform. Hey, what do I have to offer? Hey, I might not have, I've got a bachelor's degree, but I also have X amount of hours in coding. I've got this certification. I've had so many years of experience in this. So you can go to any business and walk on and be a top-notch rock star. So there's all sorts of stuff out there. You just got to watch, look for it, and ask. And that's that's pretty much what I have to say about that. Yeah.
So what I'd like to entertain at this point is actually just taking a 5-minute break. And then when we come back, there's some specific topics and background experience I know that you have. Maybe we can get into a little bit more about specifically DSD experience within some DSDs, developmental special duties, but also I know we've got somebody here, Sergeant Lowery can speak to specifically with the MTIs getting vetted and what that looks like. Some experience with state-to-state transfers within the Guard and what that's like, that experience and some lessons learned. Maybe some background on having worked many medical boards. You know, that's a significant emotional event for a lot of our service members if they're going through a med board. And then I'd really like to close talking some balancing mill-to-mill. There's a lot of mill-to-mill experience on this panel, just life experience, kids, virtual learning, everything that is not just 2020, which you just can't make up. Some of the things we're dealing with this year, but really a life of service and leave some of those lessons forward. So I show 10 after. I know we're on different time zones. So if we could do a 5 minutes, we'll come back at 15 after. I'd love to hit those subjects. Over.